welcome to another broadcast of Authors First on the Artist First Radio Network. It's high noon on the eastern coast of the United States. This is Z-Man sitting in Studio 1A. Very glad to be here with you guys today. We have a great program coming your way. Maybe that's why this broadcast averages over 100,000 listeners per episode. We are humbled by your generous listenership to our station. And we do that because we bring you the best new books you've never read. And there's a great new book you're going to want to get by our guest. It's called Money Anxiety, and it's written by our guest. Let's welcome Dr. Dan Geller. Hi, Doc.
Hello, Scott. Pleasure to be on your great show.
Well, good morning. We're reaching you out in California. You're on the morning show today.
Yes. It's great, and it's fascinating to hear about your listenership. That's very impressive.
Well, it's taken us quite a while, and almost 20 years to build up the listenership for this broadcast. We are humbled. Getting 100,000 people to pay attention to anything that you're doing is not an easy task.
No, not at all. Getting 10 people to listen to what you have to say is tough.
And I must say, while I'm on our a little bit of publicity for the station here, we have 6 shows a week, 6 regular shows. We have 30 shows a week we do, but 6 of those shows, including this one, reach over 100,000 per show. Not bad for a station. I got to say this because your book, Money Anxiety, we're going to be discussing. Well, I'll save that for a minute. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Well, let's talk about you, Dr. Geller. Before we get into your book, let's introduce you as a person to our listeners. You got your PhD from, is it Touro University? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah. Touro University, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And where is that?
Well, they are in different locations. They have different campuses. There is one in New York, actually, Los Angeles, here in Northern California, where the medical school is. So they're spread all over.
Well, and folks, just a little bit of background on Dr. Geller. You may have read his articles in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Chicago Tribune, Credit Union Times. You may have seen him on Fox, Bloomberg, on and on. I left out many of them. You have been you've made the rounds in the publicity circles.
Yeah, Scott. You see, the subject of money anxiety, or the umbrella subject of behavioral finance, is a relatively new subject. Relatively new, let's say, the last 20 years or so. And it's a fascinating topic because we are discovering things that we didn't know before about ourselves. You see, that's the fascination. We are really actually looking inside at ourselves, looking in the mirror. And now we are seeing different things, and we understand how we do things better than we understood before.
Well, you are listed as an expert in behavioral finance, and I believe the one of the purposes of your book, Money Anxiety, is to uncover the mystery, as you call it, of the financial mind. Judging from my ex-wife, I don't think she had a financial mind, but that's a whole nother. She managed to spend every penny I made, but that's another program, I think.
Well, that's the thing, Scott. We all do. We all behave in the same way. And as we go into kind of the more specifics about our financial behavior, you and the listeners will realize we're all in it together. We all have the same tendencies to do the same type of things and to make the same decisions, because our financial behavior starts with our physiology, with our brain, and we all share the same brain functions pretty much.
So what got you started on this topic, and what made you write a book about money anxiety?
So the starting point was really my curiosity. When I looked around, Scott, at how people make financial decisions, personal financial decisions, not corporate decisions, but I looked around and I noticed that for the most part, collectively, people make the wrong financial decisions. I'll give you two quick examples. So let's go back to the kind of the height of the last financial crisis of 2008, 2009, which was really, in essence, a real estate crisis. That's kind of at the core of the financial crisis. And you look at the decisions that people made regarding their mortgages and the equity, and it's mind-boggling. There were so many people who took on mortgages that they knew they can't afford. Now, this is not a blame game. It's not, necessarily the people's fault only. Everyone participated in this party. The people, the banks, the government, everyone was on it together. But the bottom line is, why would a person who, let's say, makes $50,000 take on a mortgage of, let's say, $500,000, knowing that he or she will not be able to afford it at some point, meaning all the subprime issue that, they were given a 2% interest for a couple years, and then at some point the bill will come due and they can't afford it. So there is a reason why they did that, and that's why I started kind of looking into how can one make such a financial decision. Another example is also from the same time period when the financial crisis started. People started moving the bank savings from CDs into what we call liquid accounts, checking, savings, and money market, because they are liquid, because you can withdraw them at any time. This was the wrong financial decision. It cost them a lot of money, but it gave them this feeling of instant accessibility to the funds, which is a false, type of feeling, because any amount in the bank in any account, you can withdraw it. But that's part of what kind of drew me into this subject. Why do people make wrong financial decisions? And that's how I started this journey of exploring how we make financial decisions. And what I discovered is fascinating, and that's what I basically describe in the book Money Anxiety, how the process goes from our physiology through our psychology and ends up with our behaviorology.
Well, I know you said you didn't want to put the blame, have a blame game here on this broadcast, but I've got to take just a minute. I think, what do you call 500 bankers at the bottom of the ocean? A good start. The financial industry in this country is shameful. Bankers turned into predators. We had robot signings. We had people kicked out of their homes that they weren't delinquent on their mortgages. Billions of dollars were paid by financial institutions in this country. And how many of those people went to jail? That's right, none of them. When Wells Fargo was busted for laundering almost $1 billion for the drug cartels, how many Wells Fargo executives spent one day in jail? None of them. Until we have accountability in the financial world, until we start putting some of these bankers in jail for ruining the lives of tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people around the world, I think there should be a blame game. I think we should line up some of these people in front of a firing squad. I'm sorry, but I had many of my friends where their retirements were ruined. Their lives were ruined because of these SOB bankers, who, the same banker that you were just talking about, that would bring you in and talk you into this loan and tell you could afford it, and hide the fact that this is going to turn into a balloon payment down the road and you're going to be financially ruined, so they could make fat commissions. I don't know. I don't think we should let the bankers off as easy as this country has.
Scott, I really separate cause and effect. So again, from my research, the cause was pretty much everyone was on it together. So yes, the bankers, and yes, the various government entities, they were on it together. And of course, the actual, the consumers, they were on it together. Now, as far as the effect, yes, everyone enjoyed the party, but when the music stopped, only the consumers were left lying down on the floor because governments, they don't run out of money because they can always get money from us. And the same thing with the banks. The banks were bailed out with our money, with public money.
Taxpayer dollars.
So yes, as far as the effect, the consumers were those left holding the bag. But as far as the cause, pretty much everyone enjoyed the party while it lasted.
Well, let me just say one more point of that, and we'll move on. I was getting gas yesterday at a Marathon station in Ohio, and on the gas pump is a large, probably 4 by 6 inch sticker label that says, if you're using a debit card to purchase gas, your bank may put a $200 hold on your bank account for 72 hours. So why do they do that? So they can catch people and make fees. So if you're a college kid, you got $50 in your account, you go get $10 worth of gas and use a debit card at that Marathon station, you are now $140 overdrawn. Even though you have money, because they're allowed to play these games with the consumers. They're predators. We ought to start a radio show that says, let's shoot a banker. I mean, I can't think of another industry that can get away with predatory practices like that, and no one says anything about it. Okay, well, that's not what you were on the program to talk about. I just wanted to, and maybe that'll save somebody listening, which you think you got $50 in your account, you're a college kid, and you go get $10 worth of gas at a Marathon station, your bank's going to put a $200 hold on your account. How can they even do that? How is that even legal? Well, because they're bankers, and bankers are above the law. Okay, well, all right. The crazy man speaking is me. That's Scott Z from Artists First, but our distinguished guest is Dr. Dan Geller, and we're now going to start talking about his book, Money Anxiety. He's uncovered the mystery of your financial mind. Do you think that part of the problem, as you were just discussing with the consumer end of this last recession, was an uninformed consumer? Do you think that those people really knew what they were getting into when they signed the $500,000 mortgage and they're making $50,000, or was the salesmanship of the banker just better?
Well, it's a combination, but the starting point is pretty much the way we make financial decisions. And just like I describe in the book, brain research pretty much shows us that we have, three major functions in our brain. We have what we call the reptilian part of the brain. That's the one in the back of our head. And this part has a kind of the sole purpose of the reptilian part of the brain is survival, to ensure our survival. That's where our instinctive decisions or instincts come from. When our ancestors saw a tiger in the woods and they ran away, it came from the reptilian part of the brain. Of course, we don't run into tigers today on the street, but today our instinct basically applies to our financial survival. So that's the part of the brain that where we make instinctive decisions. And in most cases, when it comes to personal finances, those decisions are wrong. And then in the middle, we have kind of our emotional part of the brain. But the part that really plays a role in financial decision is our cortex, neocortex, which is the frontal part of the brain. That's where our intellect lies. And that's where we make analytical decisions. And basically, our financial decisions is a play between these two parts of our brain. Generally speaking, when we are under stress and high anxiety, we tend to make more instinctive decisions, and when we are more relaxed and at low level of financial anxiety, we tend to make analytical decisions. So that's kind of the starting point, our physiology. But this kind of connects to our kind of psychological makeup, because when we in the professional jargon, our instinctive decisions are also referred to as System 1. System 1 decisions that are instinctive decisions, we can make multiple type of those decisions at the same time, because we don't need to think hard or concentrate. For example, we can drive and talk on the phone at the same time, legally, of course, hands-free. So we can do that because driving and talking is pretty much an instinctive type of a function. We don't need to concentrate, excuse me, very hard. On the other hand, when it comes to the analytical type of thinking, which in the professional jargon is called System 2, we can do only one task at a time. So, for example, we cannot prepare our taxes and take a driving test at the same time. It just won't work, because we need to concentrate on one task at a time when it comes to our System 2 or analytical thinking. And so that's kind of the play between the two. Basically, research shows that whenever we default to our instinctive decision when it comes to our personal finances, we tend to make the wrong decisions. So that's what happened with, for instance, shifting money from CDs to checking account. It was an instinct. Let's have this money in checking account so it will be readily available to us in case we need it. Wrong. Consumers lost pretty much half the interest income during the recession because they made this decision, because obviously CDs pay a much higher interest rate than checking account. Kind of, to put some numbers on that, if we look at the 5 years from 2008 to 2013, consumers lost about $60 billion in interest income because they made this decision. Wrong decision. This goes on and on and on, pretty much throughout our financial life. When money anxiety goes up, we default to instinctive decisions, and in most cases, we make the wrong financial decision.
Well, I'm old enough to remember when CDs actually paid interest that was above the rate of inflation. For a consumer, when they're looking at their CD and they're getting 1.9%, and then they move it into the checking account and they're getting 0.5%, do some consumers just throw up their hands and say, "Cripe, what's the difference? We're talking a small amount of money at the end of the day."
Yes, you're absolutely right. Although it's the same effort to leave the money in CDs as to have it in checking account, the shift occurred basically because of the instinct. You see, we inherently we have this instinct of hoarding at times of uncertainty. This came again from our ancestors. When the weather changed and they didn't understand it, the first thing they did was hoard food and wood and put it in the cave. They didn't know that it's just a weather system. It comes and goes. They fear it. Uncertainty. So we do the same thing. Yeah, we don't need to hoard food and wood in caves anymore, but we do the same thing with our money. We move it to checking account. We kind of get the feeling that it's under the mattress. We can access it anytime. Today, of course, one major difference between the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, and the Great Depression in the 30s is that in the 30s we did not have insurance. We didn't have the FDIC, and the instinct was to actually physically put the money under the mattress. That's when we have the runoff on the banks. So when the Great Recession started in the 30s, people actually lined up in front of the bank and withdrew money and put it under the mattress. We did the same thing in the last financial crisis, but we didn't take the money out because it's insured, but we did move it to checking to get this feeling that it's closer to us and we can withdraw it instantly.
Well, you've come up with this money anxiety index, which is what you've been talking about, and I'm wondering if, back in the 90s, if I recall correctly, the decade of the 90s was a great growth period, a great increasing in wealth of the average consumer. The middle class did very well. We created tens of thousands of millionaires through the Microsoft and other investments in that. And then you compare that to the last decade, or your 2008, when the things go haywire for everybody. Would you like to compare maybe what the money anxiety index would have been in the 90s compared to what we've seen in recent years?
Of course. I mean, during the 90s, yes, money anxieties was fairly low, relatively low. It peaked during and in the aftermath of the recession over 100. Just kind of to get kind of a reference point, if we look at the money anxiety index in the last 50 years, the average is about 70. If we look at the height of the recession, it peaked at about 109, and then today we are at about 65. So we are doing okay. It's not as low as it has been historically. There were times in the mid-60s when the money anxiety index was in the mid-30s. Those were the good old days. So money anxiety is kind of slightly below average, but most importantly is the trend. The trend line, and people can see all that on the moneyanxietyindex.com website, is trending down. And that's good, because when it's trending down, the trend is more important than the index for one single month. So things are improving. They are not great, and the improvement is really kind of slow and marginal, but still, nevertheless, things are getting better. I wanted to mention, Scott, that it's kind of a coincidence. Just yesterday, I published an article about the whole issue of how to measure financial confidence. Because the uniqueness of the money anxiety index is that it measures what people do with their money, not what they say they do with their money, which are two different things. And in the article that I just published yesterday, I provide kind of a case in point. During January and February of this year, two of the leading consumer confidence indices were wrong, or they basically reported confidence level in complete opposite to what people actually did with their money. So, for example, in January, these two leading indices reported that consumer confidence is going up. But when you look at consumer consumption for that month, for January of this year, it went down. That's a paradox. Cannot be. Consumers who have higher level of confidence are going to spend more, not less. And then the opposite happened in February. In February, these consumer confidence indices reported declining consumer confidence, yet when you look at spending and consumption, it went up. And the reason for that is that all those consumer confidence indices are based on surveys. They either call people or send them, a questionnaire through the web, and they ask them, how do you feel about the economy? Is it better? Is it worse? And whatever answers they get, they analyze, and that's the index. But clearly this is very, very subjective, and it depends how the person feels that morning when he or she answers the question. If they got a raise yesterday, they'll say the economy is great. If they lost their job, they'll say the economy sucks. So it's not really objective, it's subjective. And that's why they get it wrong. The money anxiety index is different. We don't ask people, we just observe what they do with their money. And that's why it's so much more reliable and accurate. And of course, in January and February, the money anxiety index got it right. In January, when consumers reduced their spending, it did show an elevated level of money anxiety. And in February, when consumers increased their spending, it did show a decrease in level of financial anxiety, right on the money.
Well, you've hit that. You've hit a home run there. Folks, if you're just tuning in, that's Dr. Dan Geller. He is the author of Money Anxiety. The website is moneyanxiety.com. Excuse me. You can get to the moneyanxiety.com index by linking through there. It's available through the moneyanxiety.com links, which we also have on our homepage. And if you're listening to this as an archive, the link is right next to the archive link. We always want to make it easy for you listeners to find the materials that we have for our guests. Now, there's an interesting a quote from the Money Anxiety website I read, which says, "Why do we hate to lose more than we love to win?" Please explain that.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of my favorites. And you see those, like I mentioned earlier, Scott, that the whole topic of behavioral finance, again, it's relatively new compared to other disciplines, but it's fascinating because we are learning so much about ourselves. So the whole issue of why do we hate to lose more than we like to win comes from the way winning and losing impact us. So what research shows is that the emotional impact of a loss is greater than the emotional impact of winning. And this is definitely documented in the scientific literature. One of the, kind of fathers of behavioral finance is Nobel Prize laureate Daniel Kahneman. And he and Amos Tversky, basically, they wrote what we call prospect theory, which is the prevailing theory today on this subject. And basically what prospect theory says is that the impact of a loss is twice as much, the emotional impact of a loss is twice as much as the emotional impact of a win. So I'll give you kind of a simple example with numbers. Let's say that you have a 50-50 chance of winning money. Let's say you have a 50-50 chance where you can where you can lose $100. The question is, how much do you need to win in order to take this 50-50 chance to lose $100? According to prospect theory, the amount is twice as much, $200. So if one will come to you and say, Scott, here is the deal, 50-50 chance, you can lose 100 or win 200, you might, chances are you'll take it, or the average person will. Now, my research shows that that is correct, but only under normal levels of money anxiety, and that the multiplier, or the ratio between winning and losing, is dynamic, and it changes with the level of money anxiety. In other words, when our level of money anxiety is high, then the multiplier is higher. We would expect to win more than the amount we are potentially could lose when our level of money anxiety is high as 4 times. So if we take the same scenario and we say, if you have a 50-50 chance of losing $100 or winning, what would be the winning amount that you will accept? And the answer is, if our money anxiety is high, let's say if this question is asked during the financial crisis, then most people will say $400, 4 times. They are willing to take this 50-50 chance of losing 100 if the winning amount is 400. And vice versa, in times of very, very low money anxiety, it's basically 1, meaning people will be willing to take a 50-50 chance of winning or losing $100 if times are good and money is flowing. So basically that's the reason. The reason is that the emotional impact of a loss is greater than the emotional impact of winning, and that the level of winning and losing, or the amount of winning and losing, varies with our level of money anxiety. That's the reason we hate to lose more than we like to win.
Well, and we're talking the average consumer here, right? I mean, Warren Buffett, he may take that bet on a different ratio of win-loss because for him, losing money, well, it's probably rare for him personally, but if you have lots of excess cash, then it's not much anxiety if you lose some compared to the consumer who has to, many who live, paycheck to paycheck. It can be devastating. Do you think that sometimes consumer anxiety with the money anxiety index as it gets high for consumers is because the higher it gets, the more desperate some consumers get?
Desperate in the sense of their financial decisions? Well, they default to their instinctive decision. And the instinctive decisions, like we said earlier, typically are the wrong decisions. So they panic. Yes, people panic. In high level of money anxiety, people panic. And that's kind of part of our physiological makeup. We panic and we act instinctively. And right or wrong, we really, this is our makeup. This is what we were kind of trained to do since day one because of danger, survival. Remember, the sole purpose of our reptilian part of the brain, where the instinctive decision comes from, was really created to ensure our survival, to run when we see a tiger, or to hide when we see the weather pattern changes that we didn't understand at that time, or things like that. Survival, survival, survival.
Unfortunately, in my circle of friends and acquaintances, since the recession of 2008, many of these people's lives have been ruined. Many of these people have lost their homes. Their futures are uncertain. They will never, they don't have enough life left to recover the retirement that their financial planner didn't warn them about, that was just evaporated.
Yes.
And as you see, it's always in the news lately, the ever-increasing gap between the haves and have-nots. Do you think that the money anxiety index will continue to rise? Or let me rephrase that. Is that a factor in increasing the money anxiety index, the fact that so much of the concentration of our wealth is going into the hands of so few people?
It's a factor in slowing down the improvement. You see, typically up until now, when we look at all by the way, recessions, or let's put it a little differently, ups and downs in the economy is normal. It's part of a normal cycle. Everything moves in cycles from our own lives to the universe. The sun rises and the sun sets. So on average, we had a financial crisis or a downturn in the economy every 10 years, on average. But this recession, the last recession, the Great Recession, was a little different. And here are the difference is that it was very deep, but even more importantly, the recovery is the slowest and longest ever in as long as we had records of recessions. So the question is, why is this recovery so slow and takes so long? We are now in the seventh year almost since the beginning of the recession, and we are still, dealing with some of the consequences of the recession. And when we look back at the last 2 or 3 or 4 recessions, after maybe a couple of years, we were up and running where we were before the recession. And one of the reasons which you touched on is that we have some structural changes in our society. One major change is that is demographics. America is aging. So today we have a lot more baby boomers who are either retirees or close on fixed income or close to retirement, which we didn't have, let's say, 20 years ago. And therefore, like you mentioned, many of your friends, they had severe consequences from the recession because they ran out of time. And that is true. There are more people now financially who are out of time because of where they are in their life cycle. They don't have time to recoup. And that's part of the reasons this recovery is lingering so long and is moving so slowly, because those people, many of them are on fixed income or are very close to retirement, and they cannot recoup, they cannot be more aggressive with their investment and everything else. They are pretty much risk averse, and this basically hurts the economy or slows down the recovery, let's put it this way. So this is one of the factors that is impacting us in the aftermath of this recession. Another one, Scott, is a structural change, not so much in society, but more so in what this country is as far as what do we produce. We are now producing more and more jobs. The type of jobs that we are producing are more service-oriented jobs. If you look at the new jobs that are coming on board, many of them are in the service sector, not in manufacturing. We are manufacturing less and less in this country. A lot of it goes overseas for obvious reasons. And the service jobs that are coming on board are at a lower wage than the jobs that we lost due to the financial crisis. And that's a problem. That's why we are not seeing growth in the average wage. The unemployment now is 5.5%. I mean, normally this would put tremendous pressure on wages, meaning employers will have to raise wages in order to get qualified employees, but they are not doing so because the new jobs that are coming on board are lower wages than those that we lost. So that's another factor that slows down the recovery, because basically the less money you have, the less you'll spend. That's kind of a golden rule in economics. And the new jobs, on average, are paid less than the old jobs, and therefore spending is less.
Well, unless you are one of the unfortunate souls that gets, 10 credit card offers a day in your mailbox, and people who get into desperation, they start using credit cards to pay bills, paying as high as 24, 29% interest because they're in a desperation situation. Let me just rephrase this question. What can a consumer do when they just aren't making enough money? They're just not bringing in enough income to cover their lives. The boat has a hole in it. Of course, the obvious answer is make more money or cut your expenses. But so many people in this recession have just had to, they're not bringing in enough income. What are your thoughts?
You said it right. Basically, there are two ways. One is to make more money, and one is to spend less. But let me touch on this for a second, because this is an important topic. The economic structure in this country, or the labor structure, is moving more and more into unique skills and the need to specialize in something that you can do better than anybody else. And the trick is for people is to find, and it doesn't matter what it is. It could be any type of function. It could be a plumber. It could be an auto mechanic. It could be a software engineer. Find something that you can excel in that will make you more unique, and therefore will increase your value either to your employer, or if you are self-employed, to your customers. Pretty much the days of, I can do whatever everybody else can do are gone, because there are too many of those. So, it's easy to say, make more money, but how? The only way is to find a way that your services or your talented are more unique than others. And, we're all, Scott, we're all blessed with something. But sometimes we don't see it. Sometimes we don't recognize it. And that's the trick, to find this one something, and it doesn't matter in what field. Again, it could be anything that we can do better, cheaper, or faster than others, and that's how we can increase our value and therefore our earnings.
I saw an article last week that claimed that the top 472 Americans control more wealth than the bottom 95% of Americans. That just seems tragic. It seems abhorrent, immoral, unethical, that so many people are left to feed off the crumbs when such an infinitesimally small number of people control unimaginable amounts of wealth. Can a society last? Do regular economic principles apply when you get into a situation like that?
This is kind of the two sides of the coin. When you look at a free market and free enterprise, there will always be the few who either came up with the right idea in the right time, or were just lucky. By the way, for whatever reason, in schools or when we learn about business and all that, we shy away from the whole concept of luck. But if you read the literature and research, and some of the most prominent researchers in this field would tell you that in many cases it is luck. In other words, you can take two cases of two individuals or two companies, same talent pool, same everything. One makes it, one doesn't. Well, sometimes it's luck. So, yes, in a free market environment, there will be some who will make it and some who won't make it as much. The trick is how to create an environment that all boats will rise with the tide, and that's where kind of the question lies, how to do that. But definitely the answer is not let's curtail the top and this would be the answer. If you curtail the top, all boats will sink. The trick is how do you make all boats rise on this tide? And that's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Well, and looking at the income gains over all classes over the past 20 years, as many reports demonstrate, 90% of the income gains go to 1% of the population. And I like to liken that to the following scenario. There's a wedding, and there's 100 guests, and they cut the cake into 100 pieces, one piece for each of the guests. And the first guest goes up. He's part of the elite, and he takes the first 40 pieces because that's his percentage, leaving 50 pieces behind for the other 99 people to share. In that scenario, it seems kind of gross, but in the economics, it's gee, those are smart people. I don't know. Do you find a conflict in economics and ethics?
Economics is economics, and ethics is ethics. The challenge is how to create a more, let's say, an environment that everyone benefits without curtailing those who, made it up to the top. Because if you do that, everybody will sink. That's the thing. That's the risk. I mean, we have seen all the great experiments with communism fail. It failed because of that. There was no incentive for anyone to excel. Everybody kind of were mediocre. Let's just do our job and go home, and it failed. So our system obviously produces tremendous successes and tremendous wealth. And the question is, okay, how to make everyone benefit from it? And I think there are some attempts to look at that. I live in the Bay Area, and I see the people who work here for Google and Twitter, and I'm telling you, the wages that they get and the benefits that they get are second to none. second to none. It's a luxury to work for those companies. So Google and Twitter and Facebook are highly successful companies, but even those who work for those companies, aside of course from the stock option and everything else, are enjoying the fruit of this business. So yes, there are ways to do that. Not in every industry, not in every business, not everyone can afford it. But from what I see, at least in this sector, the wealth is being shared.
I might disagree with you on that, but my son's a software engineer. He's in his early 30s, and he's doing very, very, very well. He's not struggling in any way, because that, like you say, those certain types of the economic sectors are working very well for some of those people. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a vice president of a large banking chain. I won't mention the name, and this isn't anything other than just a statement, but he said to me, he goes, "You may not realize this, but our top three business accounts deposit more money in our bank annually than all of the consumers do combined. All of the consumers combined. And they have hundreds of thousands of consumers." Now, assuming that was a correct statement, no wonder the banking industry is far more interested in the business sector than they are in the consumer sector. Do you think, first of all, that's an accurate statement?
I don't know, because I don't know the specifics, so I can't comment on that. But in general, I can tell you that banks are more interested, not just more interested, but they have to go the other way around. They are going more after consumer money, consumer deposits, than business deposits, because consumer deposits are more stable. You see, especially now after the financial crisis, where we have the Dodd-Frank regulations and Basel III regulations, banks have very, very strict liquidity guidelines, meaning it tells them how much money, in relative term, how much money in deposits they have to have in the bank for every dollar that they are lending out, and not just that, but what type of liquidity, where is the money coming from. And the most stable type of liquid account or deposits, of deposits, is consumer deposits. A couple reasons. First, on average, it comes in smaller increments, and therefore, if one or two withdraw their money, it will have a negligible impact on the overall picture. But as you said, your friend was mentioning about large corporate accounts. If one of those companies goes under for whatever reason, and the money is gone, it will have a tremendous impact on their liquidity, and they can really default. They can go under the guideline, and when they do, the FDIC can step in and take over the bank. You know that?
Yes, that's a very good point you're making, of course, yes.
Yeah. No, I would say, generally speaking, banks and credit unions, which credit unions are, by default, are more consumer-oriented than business, very little business. But banks are pretty much, they prefer consumer-based deposits for that reason, and there are other reasons, because when you have a relationship with a consumer, you really have a customer, because you can try and sell them an auto loan or personal loan or or other product. But the primary reason is the stability of the money in the bank.
Well, folks, if you're just joining us, that's Dr. Dan Geller. He's the author of Money Anxiety, which is available. Hey, where is it? Let's tell everybody where they can pick up a copy of your book.
Scott, the short answer is everywhere.
Excellent.
It's on Amazon.com and on Barnes & Noble, iTunes Store, Google Play, pretty much everywhere where books are sold, you can find Money Anxiety.
I imagine I know the answer to this question, but was there a target audience you were writing this book for?
Yes and no. I mean, people who like the whole mystery of the financial mind and behavioral finance and psychology, they will definitely enjoy it. But you know what? I think that pretty much everybody will enjoy taking this journey, and it's like looking at yourself in the mirror, like saying, I want to understand how I make my financial decisions and why. So I think this will be a worthwhile journey for pretty much everyone.
And folks, no one knows what the future holds. Hey, I'm reminded of a quote I heard from a comedian that says, "Why did God make economics people? To make the weathermen look good." I don't know if that's true or not, but
yeah, there is some truth to it. There is, they are both difficult to predict, or let's put it this way: they are both as unpredictable as it comes, because things change, and we are limited in our capacity to look forward too long and too much.
Well, of course, you don't have a crystal ball either, but would you like to make a prediction on the Money Anxiety Index? Do you believe it will trend up or down over, say, the next 10 years?
Oh, I would never go that far. I can tell you that based on the trend line, we are improving. So I can say in the next few months, looks like things will get better. But beyond that, no, I couldn't. The only long-term prediction that I can make with 100% certainty is that we will go through those cycles of up and down in the economy, no matter what. So at some point, we'll have another downturn, and after that, it will pick up, and that's the way it will go until the end of days.
I may be inaccurate in this statement, but I see the economic downturn that we just experienced, it's beginning in 2008, a direct result of unmitigated greed of people in the financial industry. The robotic signings, the sucker loans, they turned on people. I mean, when I just see the financial industry, not all of it, of course, but much of it was very predatory towards the consumers. They got their money, then they turn around and sell those loans. Now it's somebody else's problem, and they're cashing in. Wouldn't it be nice if the financial industry was actually on the side of the consumer, not predators? Is that a skewed view of just my view of the world?
Again, it's from what I have seen from my research, everybody was enjoying this party, Scott. Everybody was enjoying this party. The thing is, when the music stopped, some left, and some left the party, and some left to hold the bag. That's the bottom line. And yes, those who were left to hold the bag are the consumers.
A friend of mine who's an attorney, he works for a larger firm, and what he was doing back in the early 2000s was repossessing homes and repossessing businesses who had failed. And I remember him being over at my house one time telling me, this has got to come to an end. There's going to be a huge problem down the road, and no one's paying any attention to it. And he was spot on.
Yeah.
So if he knew that, of course, he was, kicking people out of their homes and businesses on a daily basis, then why didn't the financial planners around when my uncle lost 40% of his retirement at age 80, when my business partners here lost 40% of their, retirement at age 60, why do we just have the worst financial planners in the history? Are they just the worst financial planners in the history of their industry? Or did they, I mean, if that's your job to know what's going on and protect your consumers' money, I don't understand how some of those people could look their clients in the eyes and say, hey, I lost a bunch of your money. Sorry.
Yeah. Scott, again, when you are enjoying the party, the booze keeps flowing, the food is wonderful, you don't want to live. You don't want to live. So everybody enjoyed it. Everybody had fun until the music stopped. So that's pretty much it. And everybody was invited to this party. Let me put it this way. People may be naive. They might make the wrong financial decisions, but they are not stupid. So everybody knew where they are, and everybody was enjoying it while it lasts.
Well, perhaps consumers will be a little wiser next time. Oh, heck no, they won't. I think they're gonna behave the way they've behaved all through recorded history. The way you describe the money anxiety and the reasons we spend and save money, I think is spot on. And I don't see people changing, whether it's 100 years ago or 100 years in the future. Do you?
You're absolutely right, and that's exactly the essence of the whole concept of money anxiety or behaviorology. Our financial behavior, you're absolutely right. It goes up and down, but it doesn't change because that's who we are. That's who we are. Until someone will change us physiologically, that's who we are.
Wasn't it Einstein that said insanity is doing the same thing over and over and hoping for a different result?
Yes, he did.
Are consumers insane?
Well, not consumers, but just the way we are. The way we are. We will repeat the same mistakes next time. We will. Otherwise, why do we go into those troubles on average every 10 years? That's the way it is. That's who we are. So, but the trick is, not to chase the impossible and try and change us. We can't change us. But if we understand better who we are, maybe we can mitigate a little bit of our behavior. And this, well, it can be very helpful to the listeners when they read Money Anxiety and learn more about how they make financial decisions, why, and try and kind of be aware of it when the time comes to make a financial decision.
Well, congratulations. It's an exciting new field, behavioral finance, the Money Anxiety Index. It's and using scientific principles to come up with these things. It's exciting. I'm surprised someone hasn't done this earlier.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I mean, I meant that in a compliment. That thank goodness you were able to put all these thoughts together into a cohesive scientific endeavor. We've discussed a lot of things on this broadcast, folks, and you're welcome to download the archive and listen to it as many times as you like. But Dr. Geller, for someone who hasn't heard the entire broadcast and all the topics you've discussed about behavioral finance and the Money Anxiety Index, what piece of advice would you give? Somebody comes up to you on the street and says, Dr. Geller, what can I do better as a consumer to keep my money anxiety low? What would you tell them?
The one thing that I tell everyone and I would tell them is, first, you have to understand who you are as far as financial decisions. So read the book and just understand where those decisions come from and what are the consequences. And then when it's time to make a decision, be aware of that. Don't panic. Think analytically about your decisions and don't do it under duress.
Well, Dr. Geller, it has been a pleasure to have you on our station. It's a fascinating topic that, before this interview, I really hadn't given this a whole lot of thought, and you've really been able to focus this issue for me and hopefully a bunch of our consumers out there who will take your advice and do better. Congratulations on this book, but may I ask, what's in the future for you? You're too young to write just this book. What's your next project?
Well, the next stage is to get this book in the hands of as many people as possible, because I really think that we can make our contribution to society and to the economy, as far as my part, is by spreading the word and educating people about their financial behavior. That's really kind of what my goal is. My ultimate goal is to make as many people aware of how they make decisions, how does it work, and how to manage their financial decisions a little better next time. So that's my kind of my long-term goal, talking to people like yourself and to audience like your audience and everyone who would like to learn more about the financial behavior.
Well, Dr. Geller, thank you so much for letting us take up. In fact, we've run a little bit over. I hope I didn't infringe on your schedule for today. It's been a pleasure having you on the station, and we are here to help you get the word out about this book in any way we can. Anything at all our station can do to help you, we are at your disposal.
Thank you, Scott. It's been a pleasure. And thank you very much, and thank you to the wonderful audience that you have. And I appreciate the opportunity.
The book is Money Anxiety. The author is our guest, Dr. Dan Geller. It's available everywhere. MoneyAnxiety.com is the website. Get out there and get your copy, everybody. And thanks for tuning in to this installment of Authors First on the Artist First Radio Network. Have a great day, Dr. Geller.
Thank you, Scott. You too. Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody. This is Ron Chepsick, the producer and host of Crime Beat Radio, which airs every Thursday in the Artist First Radio Network. I am also the publisher of TG Media Books, which publishes the best in crime fiction and nonfiction. We are proud to announce the publication of George Hassett's Gangsters of Boston, the first comprehensive account of 3 centuries of thug life in the city where America began. In chilling new detail, veteran Boston journalist George Hassett reveals the city's legendary crime stories, from Prohibition to how the Kennedy family made its money, to the Irish Gang War, to the life and times of the infamous Whitey Bulger. Gangsters of Boston is easy to get. The book is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local bookstores, and at the publisher's website. The book is also available in ebook format. For further information on the Gangsters of Boston and other great books, go to www.strategicmediabooks.com. We hope you enjoy Gangsters of Boston.